So what I want to try and do out of this is really connect with writers, you know, of screenplays and TV series, because I have so much going on myself right now that, you know, I would love to be working with, you know, experienced writers and directors, you know, on some of the projects, because what's happening with me is I'm getting offered quite a lot of projects to come in and co-produce with people. And so what they want is my sort of overall guidance, but then what I want to do then is bring in writers who I can then mentor, you know, with these other producers who are looking for an authentic perspective. So if somehow by the end of our session we can set up the scenario where people can write to you, maybe, you know, with their CVs or something, or just a few paragraphs, a few lines, even a paragraph, just saying who they are, what they've been doing, and, you know, and we can connect, you know, they want to connect with me. That would be awesome.
Yeah, so we'll definitely do that. We'll set something up where we'll have folks kind of submit their work or their CVs and pass it on to you for sure.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Great. But yeah, that's exactly one of our goals here at Kalakars, is to be able to give them opportunities for folks like yourself to connect with, for work and for mentorship and all that good stuff. So I'm so glad that you see this as a place for that.
Yeah, and then also I like people to leave their cameras on, because otherwise, you know, it's better for me that I see faces.
Sure. Should we just let everyone keep their cameras on for now?
Yeah, I'm really happy about that.
Okay, great.
And then when someone wants to talk to me, oh, everyone's on. Then you can just put your hand up, then I know who it is.
Yeah. So, great.
Because of course, you know, we all look the same. That's why.
Yeah. Lapika, let me know when everyone's in. I can't quite. It looks like there's still about 40 folks waiting to be let in. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll give you a thumbs up.
Okay, cool.
Anyone here already on who I know and I've met before?
I was, we coordinated Bend It Like Beckham at CAM.
Shilpa. Who's this?
Shilpa.
Put your hand up. Put your hand up, Shilpa. Can't see you.
Oh.
Hold on, you might be on another page. Okay, so obviously that doesn't work.
Okay.
Shilpa. Oh, there you are, Shilpa. Okay, got it. Yes. In the red.
We met at San Francisco at CAM we coordinated Bend It Like Beckham and the outreach with Sony and everything.
Okay, so that was like 18 years ago now.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to age us all, me included. But Bend It Like Beckham was 18 years ago. So if I met you then, I've had about 50 reincarnations since then. So sadly, I won't remember, I'm afraid.
I met you recently, Gurinder.
Put your hand up. Who's this?
Sarita. We met at your Blinded by the Light premiere in New Jersey.
In New Jersey.
And I was with Reka, and we were backstage with you.
Oh, wonderful. That was the night I was with Bruce Springsteen and he kissed me. Yeah,
that was fun.
Okay, very good. Awesome. So just to let you know, I have my daughter sitting here with me.
Hello.
And this is what my daughter's doing.
I'm learning Punjabi.
See this?
Nice.
If I get interrupted, that's what's going on in my world right now.
That's awesome.
Well, great to meet everyone. Good to meet you all, and I'm glad Adi was able to pin me down and make me feel responsible and guilty to do this with you all.
Yeah. So just a reminder for everyone: format is Gurinder and I will have a conversation, and then we'll open up to everyone else to ask questions. Please don't forget to type in your questions. It's a little easier for us to kind of gauge and who to point out to ask Gurinder a question directly. So Gurinder, I'm just going to do a quick introduction. We have obviously a really exciting guest with us today. She's one of UK's most prominent directors. She's a bold voice, pioneer in our community. She's made films like Baji on the Beach, the opening night film at the 2007 Sundance Film Festival, What's Cooking, and like Beckham.
अच्छा कोई पंजाबी च बोल रहा है यार
Yeah, exactly.
कौन बोल रहा है पंजाबी सानू disturb कर रहे हो?
Yeah, Lupika Vishesh, if we could just mute folks, that'd be great. You know, her work's been nominated for Golden Globes, BAFTAs. She was awarded an OBE, which is an Order by the British Empire, which is given to those who are making great impact in their line of work. And of course, as we all know, Gurinder Ji over here has been doing that for quite some time. So again, thank you so much for doing this. We're really, really excited. I'm just going to jump right into it. We're going to kind of start off at the top of your career. You know, my understanding is you started off in journalism. I'd love to know sort of what made the shift to film and how did that happen for you? Oh, one second. You're on mute. We got to unmute her.
You muted me.
There we go. Yeah, there we go.
Muted? Yes.
There we go.
So I had no idea of my career. I had no idea I was going to be a film director. No idea, nothing at all. Film directors didn't look like me. It was not anything that I thought was possible or even remotely within my, career choice structure. Obviously, I had the usual doctor, lawyer, accountant pressure from parents. But my favorite subject always at school was geography. And I always loved geography, still love geography. I had a rock collection when I was about 12, which was my prized possession. I had some rock from the Mount Etna volcano eruption, which I was very proud of. So geography was my thing. And now I know why. And it's because it gave me an international perspective on the world growing up. And so when I went to university, I chose geography. And I did what we called then development studies when India and China were third world countries. And of course, you know, now they're not. But so I did development. But in between my second and third year, I went to India for 6 months. And while I was there, I volunteered at a magazine called Manushi, which was an Indian feminist magazine in Delhi. And while I was at that magazine, I read an article by a professor called Neera Desai from Nehru University. And it was about images of women in India's media. Now, this was before media studies or any of that. And so what I was reading in this article was that women on the screen were either the Sati Savitri, a good housewife, you know, the good dutiful wife who did all the cooking and cleaning and sort of kept her head down and didn't answer back, or they were vamps, you know, like Helen, you know, in short skirts and smoking and drinking. And there was a one or the other. There was nothing in between. And that is true of 70s cinema, not parallel cinema, but, you know, mainstream cinema. And that for me was like I was like, oh my God, look at that. And then at the same time in England, there had been work by Professor Stuart Hall, which was all about race and the depiction of race on TV. And we'd had the riots in England. And so there was a lot of questions around race and identity. And I realized the power of the camera in controlling who we are. And so I thought what I need to do is get behind the camera, but I need to work in news. Because if I'm in news, I can control how we're seen. And so I did a postgrad diploma in journalism, in radio journalism, and then I went and worked with the BBC for a while as a journalist. So I was a news reporter on the radio and then on TV. But what I was doing was editing little packages, you know, for the editors with us. You know, what I was doing was I'd be up all night doing little clip packages, we called them, where you'd have, you know, you would announce, you'd interview one person, cut to some music, cut to some actuality, go back to you to sum it all up. So I was making little sound pieces. And then from that, when you're in radio, you know, what I realized was that I couldn't really tell my stories in the newsroom. I had to tell the other stories. I couldn't really tell my stories. And so I fell into being a TV researcher. And then in the 80s, the most amazing thing happened in Britain, and that was the birth of British Bhangra music. And it all started in London. Some people say Birmingham, but it was London in Southall. And I was there at one of the very first gigs in Hounslow Civic Centre with a LARP. And I was like, oh my God, this is cool. And so I decided I'd like to make a pop promo with a Bhangra band. And I had a very good friend at the time, well, she's still my good friend, Kate Webb, who was very political. And I said to Kate, I really want to make a pop promo. And she said, why? And she kept asking me, why a pop promo? And out of that came a whole debate around race and identity and Britishness, because I said, this is music created by us, for us, you know, and it's distinctly British and Asian, and it's not from India, and it's, you know, and it's not our parents' music, it's our music. And so she pushed me, and then I applied to the British Film Institute to make a film as part of their new director scheme, and I submitted this idea for a movie called I'm British But ... and it was to document the music scene, but what it meant to me in terms of British Asian identity. And that film, then I got the money, and that film is called I'm British But, and you can see it on my website at Bendit Networks and also on YouTube. And that film, it really remains one of the only films that documents our history in our words as British Asians in the 80s in Britain, and the whole birth of the music scene. And then from that, Karen Bambra, who was head of Channel 4, saw that short, because it had a cinema release, it was on in cinemas. She saw it and she picked me up and said, okay, this is a voice, a new voice that I want to develop and nurture. And she put me together with Mira Sial, and together we worked on Baji on the Beach, and that's how Baji on the Beach happened.
Yeah, Baji on the Beach, I don't know if, I mean, I've watched it, it's a great film. It really is a breakthrough film, right? I mean, it's female protagonists, about a brown family. Everyone sort of has their own, you know, worlds they live in. I guess my next question is, you know, regarding the films that you do make, you know, they're all brown or have female protagonists. Even with the track record of your success with your films, do you find telling these stories still to be, you know, difficult in the room when you're pitching them for whether it's contribution?
Yes.
Yeah.
People aren't interested really unless they can, unless they're seen as commercial. Mm-hmm. And I think there's still a constant push and pull. I recently tweeted about this. Someone, there was this debate going on about Mindy Kaling's new show on Twitter, and a lot of people, you know, were talking about it. And I sort of avoided. I didn't really want to get involved in the debate, you know, in other people's work. And then this one person said that I had, obviously people complain that sometimes the characters weren't representative and didn't ring true to other people's experiences. And then this person said, yeah, but you know, Gurinder Chadha did it 18 years ago in Bend It Like Beckham and has always managed to do it. You know, so that was the context of the debate. And then I decided to get involved, and I said, yeah, but it's a constant struggle in our world in trying to depict what is our truth versus what commissioners see as our truth. And that really is still very relevant from the day I started till today.
So how do you find the balance? How do you think you find the balance to get that across the page and across the table?
Well, I think it's one of those things that I struggle with. You know, I struggle with because this is where the whole world of compromise comes in. This is where the whole world of commerciality comes in. You know, so what I find what you have to do is conceive of stories that are so audacious that put your characters in such audacious positions that they can't be pushed into a stereotype. You know, so an Indian girl who wants to play football is kind of so out there, you know, and then you add David Beckham into it and everyone's like, wow, this is fucking weird. This is weird. This is so weird. Who ever heard of Indian girls playing football, number one? And whoever heard of an Indian girl being able to bend a ball like David Beckham? This is so weird, you know. It was like that, you know. So when I first suggested that film, you know, it didn't, everyone said, oh, it's not truthful, it's not commercial. It's like no Indian girls like football or play football, or it's just the wrong kind of world. You know, it's not authentic, or it's not, you know, it's not real. And of course it was real because my co-writer Daisy was a big Man U supporter, and you know, and played football. So, but you know, it took 3 or 4 years actually to get that film financed. So that's an indication, you know, of how hard it is. You just have to get cleverer and cleverer with what the market wants and pitch your stories in a way that the market wants it, but at the same time, you know, as the market wants it, but also at the same time how you so you can still hold on to what you see as the story. So like, I'm a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, always have been, you know, since I was a student when I went to see him live for the first time. And so Safraz and I have been friends for a long time. And so it made sense when Safraz, when he said he's going to write his memoirs, and I said, great, you know, and I read it and I said, I know how to turn this into a film, you know. But for a lot of people, that was like, who wants to make a film about a Muslim kid living in Luton in the 80s, you know?
Right.
But having it be about Bruce Springsteen helped in some ways, but not in other ways. Because in other ways, people were like, huh? Bruce Springsteen? No one's interested in Bruce Springsteen. He's an old codger, you know. So as there are as many fans of Bruce, there are those who aren't fans of his. But because the movie was so terribly touching and moving, you know, and gave you that experience of that Asian kid in such a way that it became, you know, it became universal, you know. So I used the Beecham, Bruce Springsteen thing, used it, but then I went on and made the film that made it universal, which allowed us to have that, you know, tremendous sale at Sundance.
Yeah, you had an incredible sale. I think it sold for 15 million, which I think is heard of at Sundance, or in general at festivals.
Excuse me, I'm just open my door 1 minute.
Yeah, no worries.
Rajni, वो छोटे काट लो थोड़े pieces. इसलिए 2 कर लेती हूँ. हाँ, मोटे बहुत हैं. ठीक है. Sorry.
No worries.
Cooking dinner as well at the same time.
You spoke about market. What do you think the market wants now? I mean,
well, I think it's an interesting time now, you know, with Netflix and Amazon and all the streamers, you know. I think it's harder to get movies made for the big screen, but I think it's easier to get your stories made. I think one interesting development has been Netflix and Amazon vying for India content from India. And that's something that's always a bit of a bugbear with me, because I like to do content that has Asians in it, but not necessarily from India or the subcontinent. But things like Sacred Games and other content has shown that there is a market, you know, for content in India, and that it can travel, but they still haven't had their Narcos, you know, because it's fundamentally impossible, I think, to create something that works for, you know, the Indian audience and the West, but it's not impossible to create content that works for the diaspora in the same way, which is what I do. And it's still, I hold many records, but one record I hold is making the only film that has been #1 in the UK and India at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And that was Bride and Prejudice.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So I think I think it's interesting. Where I'm having difficulty is if I come up with a series that I want to do that I think is really cool from my perspective, and it is about the diaspora, it's disheartening because you get shoved into different departments of Netflix, or Amazon, whatever it is. Oh no, they look after India, or they look after this, or they look after that. And basically, I think the world is behind. I always think the world is behind us, or certainly me. I'm always ahead of the curve, and I'm always having to wait for people to catch up with me in terms of creating content for the diaspora.
No, that's a great point. I think most of your films are always ahead of their time, which is that's great to hear, because I feel our community often feels that way when they're trying to tell their stories.
Yeah.
In terms of,
I think being ahead of the time means that things don't date. So, like, if you watch Bargee on the Beach or Bandit or any of these films, they could have been made yesterday.
Yeah. It's actually a great piece of advice, I feel like, for our folks. I want to talk a little bit about process. From my understanding, Blinded by the Light was a little bit more of a reaction film to what was happening with Brexit. I would imagine Bend It Like Beckham came from more of a personal space. How do you compare writing a story from a personal space as compared to the reactionary climate?
It's always personal. I think it's always personal, and it's always political. And that's the motivating force for me, is everything I do is always about racism. The stories people might think they're comedies, or they might think there's something else, so they're always about prejudice in some way or another. And they're always about me trying to either expose prejudice or enlighten you or bring you together, or they're always about tackling race, from my perspective. And even Bend It Like Beckham, people think it's a comedy, and it is funny, but at its core, at its heart, it's a story about the father who wasn't able to do what he wanted because of the racism he experienced, and how he's going to try and control his daughter because he thinks that's going to protect her, but actually he's giving in to that racism, and until he learns from her to say, you know what, fuck it, I'm the one that suffered. Let her have her dream, let her go for it, it's good. And so that film is very much about racism, but most people don't see it as that.
Yeah, of course. I think the reason being is because you have this amazing ability to take serious and dramatic moments and kind of flip them on their head and make them into comedies. I think that's very hard to do.
It is hard, and I think my advice to writers is you can't hide who you are from your writing, and you shouldn't. You should just, because the deeper you go into why you're writing and who you're writing for and what you're writing about, the deeper you go, the more universal it will be, and the more authentic it will be, and the more it will attract an audience. Because we want to be surprised. We want to be surprised, and we want to feel emotional, and we want to be touched. We don't want to be told what we've already seen, and we also don't want it to feel familiar. We want it to feel unusual, and that we're privileged to enter into a life here.
Yeah, I guess. Talking about going deeper, do you know at the start of your writing process, where you're going to end the film?
I think not always. Excuse me 1 minute.
Yeah, of course.
Did you do all of that? You did that, and did you do that? This is what we learned today, remember? Ta-ta, ta-ta,
Mom,
da-da.
do I need to do this?
No, just what we learned today, that page and that page. And you have to do it so you know it off by heart.
Our next talk is going to be talking about raising kids, because we're all gonna have that issue at some point.
I've just finished, you'll see it soon, I just finished a little short for Netflix with 18 directors from around the world.
Oh, awesome.
And it's 10-minute film or 9-minute films about lockdown, your week in lockdown. Well, I mean, your time in lockdown. Yeah. And it's how these different directors have coped. And I don't know what any of the other directors have done, but what I've done is I handed it over to the kids, and I made the kids sort of tell the story. And so it's the kids' version awesome. of lockdown, and it's very sweet. It's a great insight into who I am and what I do, because they, in it, they're all like very truthful, and like I've been on the news talking about, the fact that the coronavirus affects BAME people more, and so there's a shot of me on the news, and then they go, well, my mum's a bit of a hypocrite because she eats really bad foods, but then she goes on the news and says this, and so anyway, it's quite good. But when I was saying about your own voice, I think that I can't stress that enough, particularly now, because with so many platforms, what people want is originality. And those are the projects that will stand out, is the original ones. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens when people approach me, that's the work I do with them, is to say, why should I read this? And push them, to be original. And I think that you asked me when I first conceive. So what happens is I'll think of a world that I'm interested in, I'll think of a world that I'm interested in, and then I'll spend some time on it, and then it takes me one scene. I've got to see one scene in my head. I've got to understand one scene, one moment that is emotionally charged. And when I have that, and I start caring about it, that's when I then start expanding and start sitting down and working out a flow diagram. But it's often, for me, it's about the world. What is the world that I'm interested in? And why is that world resonant with today? And what is the point of telling the story today? Like, it's got to be relevant for today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, just a reminder to everyone, in about 10 minutes or so, we'll start taking questions from everyone else. So please continue to type them into the chat here. Another question that I think a lot of folks tend to struggle with is, like, how do you know when something's ready? Like, how do you know when something's ready to go out with? Especially when it's your first feature.
I think that a good thing is to watch a movie that's similar to what you've written, that is in the genre of what you've written, and hold yours up against that. Does it have the same sense of storytelling? Does it have the same twists and turns? And I'm also a great believer in the 3-act structure. I mean, is that something that people still do?
Of course.
Do people do that?
Of course.
Do people know what I'm talking about? Put your hands up if you do the 3-act structure in your writing. Hold on, I've got to look at 4 pages. Okay. Yeah, I feel, and even any script that I look at, that's how I judge it. Is the 3-act structure there? And also, if you have a 3-act structure, then you're in good hands. Mm-hmm. With someone, that okay, they know what they're doing, they're experienced. So my 2-3 hours of reading whatever they've written is not going to go to waste, because it's really building in the way that a 3-act structure should. I got sent a script a couple of weeks ago, and it was for a pilot, and it was from a good company. I know them, and the writers I'm huge fans of. But they wrote Come From Away, you know, the musical, which I like. Best musical ever. I love that so much. I think it's better than Hamilton. It's such a great musical. Anyway, they had written the script, so I was interested to see how their writing was going to work, you know, in television format versus musical. And it was a real pleasure to read it. It was such a pleasure because right from the beginning, from the opening, the way they started telling the story made me feel like I was in superb hands. And they didn't disappoint, you know. Characters got deeper. The scenarios twisted and turned. It got little bits of revelations came out, you know, and it just built. And then suddenly everything took a twist. And then by the end of 60 pages, I was like, wow, this is really good. I love this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Another question I want to kind of focus on is on collaborations. How do you what do you look for when you're collaborating with editors or cinematographers? How does that relationship work for you?
I think it generally is about, do these people understand what I want? Do they understand what I'm trying to do?
Why haven't you finished?
Oh, okay. Yeah, do they get the bigger vision? And then also that's the great creative time, you know, working with your DP is the time to, you know, be a director and to use the camera and the visuals to tell your story in a way that's not necessarily about the politics of what you're trying, you know, your themes, you know, it's just to make it really cinematic. And obviously everything will come into that. Editing is harder. You've got to work with editors who get you and understand your emotional and political imperatives. And those are hard to find, editors, you know, I think. But when it clicks, you know. I just made a TV series called Beecham House, and it's coming on PBS June 14th. And we had 3 editors on that, one of whom I worked with before, and 2 I'd never worked with before. One was a woman and one was a man. And of the 3 editors, I ended up doing all 6 episodes. So each was doing 2 episodes. And one of the editors I was shocked. It was like they were reading my mind, and they cut so beautifully and so emotionally and was just so on the money. And I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. And it was the white guy who I'd never worked with before.
Oh,
you know, very interesting, Josh. And I was like, boy, am I going to work with you again? Wow, you know. And that was a lovely surprise, you know. So sometimes it just comes out of nowhere, you know. He was very assured, he understood, and see, what he was looking for was truth in a performance. I mean, everyone looks for truth, but as an editor, he was looking for his own truth, but also my truth, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. It just clicked. And so that's the great thing about film, is you do often collaborate with a lot of people, and you don't always know. It's not necessarily someone who's just like you is going to be the best person who connects with you, you know.
Right.
And it's important to be fluid. You know, when you're making films, it's the most important thing is you have to be fluid, and you have to just let yourself be surprised and let yourself be, you know, taken into directions that you're not always expecting. Same with scripts, I find. So once you start writing, the characters start telling you what to do, you know?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I love that. And that's when I think you really do need to listen to them, you know? I'm going to cover it like this. Okay, so now do Jumpy. What is cha-cha?
And then in the next few minutes, I'm going to start opening it up to our attendees. But the next set of questions.
Yeah.
The next set of questions that I have is what we're calling our rapid fire. So
Great. Let's do that.
okay, so it's 5 questions. I'll start with the first one, which is one book you'd recommend to a filmmaker.
Oh, Robert McKee, 3-act structure. What's it called? The Robert McKee book, whatever that one is.
Yeah. Okay. The second one is one film you find yourself going back to for inspiration.
Wow. It's a Wonderful Life.
Good choice.
And Tootsie.
And Tootsie, oh.
Which I think is a perfect film. Every element of that film is perfect.
Of Tootsie?
Tootsie, yeah. And It's a Wonderful Life.
The next question is one film you wish you wrote or directed.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Do you have a second choice?
I won't say Tootsie. There's many films I could tell you that I would have made a better film had I written and directed them.
All right, we'll go with that if you want to.
In there. It's Jean Paul. Yeah, it's not my style, but I do think Tokyo Story is an amazing film. Tokyo Story by Otsu. That's one of my favorite films. Yeah.
Our next question is, what would you tell your younger self?
I would tell my younger self is go out there and follow your instinct, because your instinct is always right. Don't be afraid of it. Fight for your instinct.
And the last question of this roundup before we open it up is, it's kind of a fun one. It's part of our application process. It's what type of food are you and why? Or what type of food would you be and why?
Oh my God. Well, I often feel like a golgappa, that's for sure. I would say, what kind of a food am I? I think I don't know, Singapore laksa. That's one of my favorite foods because it's sometimes sweet, sometimes spicy, has a lot of depth, a lot of different flavor, lots of different ingredients have to go in to make it complete. The balances, the cultural balances of it have to be perfect. But when they all come together and you take that first sip of that broth, it's like manna from heaven.
Great answer, great answer. So I'm going to start opening it up. We have good questions coming in left and right. I'm going to start with, and excuse me if I pronounce your names wrong here, but Vatsala G.
Where are you?
Hi.
Put your hand up. Okay, what's up? Oh, it's Vatsala.
Yes, thank you.
Hey.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. And I've wanted to say this to you for many years. Bend It Like Beckham was the first film where I felt myself represented. So thank you. Thank you so much for making that film. And my question is that the images in your films are so meaningful. And I wanted you to talk to us about your partnership with your cinematographers, which you did a little bit. So I'll change my question. How do you prep for your images before your cinematographer joins you? As a director, how do you visualize your film? And what's your process like?
Well, I think that it's sometimes different for different films. But I often see them as I write them. You know, even if I collaborate on a script, I'll always do the last pass. And I see it as I write it. So in my head, I have a visual. And also when I'm writing, I tend to go and visit the places anyway, or I'll look them up on YouTube or something. So I sort of have visual ideas already. And then you then have to compromise on what is available location-wise, and sometimes what you have to cheat, you know, because you can't go to a certain location that you want to go to, and so then all the compromises start coming in. But I think that you you know, everywhere is cinematic. You can look in any direction, you know, it's cinematic. You just have to tame the vision for your particular vision, you know. And so, you know, you have to be so on top of your story and what your story is about and what you're trying to say with your story, in order to make the visuals work. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. But I also want to say nothing feels extra and everything has so much meaning. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's the other thing about filmmaking, is that you have to be very efficient. You cannot ever do one thing. Everything has to mean 10 things. So you have to work with, in a scene, you have to work with this dialogue. You have to work with the obvious visual image. You have to work with the sound effects. You have to work with the music. You have to work with the costume. You have to work with the lighting. You know, you have to work with the move. What kind of move is the camera going to do or not do? You know, there's so many different elements that are going on that are controlling what I want you to think and feel at any particular time. And that's kind of how it works. I'll give you an example. Have you all seen Blinded by the Light? So in Blinded by the Light, there's a scene sort of 2/3 of the way in, which was written as an argument with Javid and his father, when he's in his room and he's listening to his headphones and he's doing his homework, and his dad comes in with a glass of milk, and his dad says, you know, why are you listening to all this haram music? And he pulls his headphones off, and they're supposed to have a row. But when we were in the studio shooting it, I felt like I've already seen this scene. I've shot rows with the dad and him. He's sitting here with the music, and there was a song that I really wanted to use of Bruce's, and I hadn't found a place for it. I didn't know where it could go, but it was an important song. And then it suddenly occurred to me just at that moment, as I rehearsed it, that I could do it there. That's what I meant about being fluid. You have to be fluid. And so what I ended up doing was, in the bedroom, it was a set, the bedroom, I cut a square out of the set, which is covered by a map in the rest of the film. But I cut a square out and I put the camera outside the room, and I tracked in like that very slowly on Javid's big close-up. And so we play, instead of doing it as a master with singles, we played the majority of the scene just on Javid's face, with the dad in the back walking back and forth, saying what he was saying, which was, you know, you have to listen to me, you know, I want you to be a lawyer or a doctor or this. And so, but whatever the dad was saying, it didn't matter, because he knew what the dad was saying, you know. But what was more important was how Javid was listening to it. And Javid wasn't listening to it, because Javid wasn't listening to his dad, because Javid was listening to Bruce, who was saying, you got to cut loose, you know, don't let them get you down. You got to get out, you know, get into the darkness on the edge of town, you know. So in that moment, you were telling the story between the dad and the son, which was the traditional, you know, Asian story of conflict between parents. But what I did was bring in Bruce as a character there with the lyrics of Darkness, which spoke to Javid saying, God, I gotta get out of this shit. I gotta escape from this world. And then the camera move, by going very, very slowly into his close-up, was emotionally telling you all to say, this is, feel for him. If I'd wanted you to feel for the dad, I would have shot the dad, and you would have gone, oh, poor dad, you know, he doesn't know what to do with this Nakama son who's listening to music all the time. But no, the shot was about, you know, that. But the dad gets his emotional stuff later.
Yeah. I think that's a great note, and I think it's a very clever way of getting that scene done. I'm going to open the next question to Nisha. Nisha K has a question.
Where are you, Nisha?
Where is Nisha? Is she still here with us?
Thank you for your answer.
So
okay.
Oh, I've got it. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hi.
There we go. Yeah.
Your hands up,
Hi.
Alicia.
So I'm so sorry. I was just washing dishes while listening. Okay, so one of the questions I had was, how do you balance that thin line between someone giving you notes that they think doesn't work, but it's actually culturally specific to the script and the story, and you feel like it informs the story, but they just don't think it sits well with the story. How do you deal with that?
So notes are a bitch, basically, because they're a game that you have to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't see you, Nisha. Where are you?
Nisha,
Are you?
Sorry, my video actually doesn't work.
Oh, okay. So basically, in that situation, what I always say about notes is you've got to get behind the note. You've got to get behind the note. Why are they saying that note? What is the reason for that note? What is it exactly? I mean, do they have a point? Is there too much stuff? Are you repeating yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Is this an element that you don't need? You know, or is it that they don't understand the importance of this element for you? You know, do they not understand the significance of it, how it impacts the character or the story later? Is that what it is? In which case, you've got to make it better. You've got to keep that element in, but make it indispensable. Make it a part of the story that can't be removed.
Mm.
makes sense.
Thank you.
I'm going to open the next question off to Swetha.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks so much for chatting with us. I vividly remember going to the movie theater with my mom when I was a teenager to see Bend It Like Beckham, and remember her laughing at all the mom jokes, recognizing herself in a lot of them, I think.
Excellent. I used to be Jess in Bend It Like Beckham, and now I've become the mum myself.
I have a feeling I'll be headed in that direction too. My question is about Blinded by the Light, which I loved. You made a really bold aesthetic choice to have the kind of lyrics pop up on screen, the strong textual graphics. And I would love to hear you talk about how you came to make that choice. I think in the wrong hands, it might have felt kind of cheesy, but in Blinded by the Light, it was so powerful and moving, and it, I think, really got to that kind of teenage angsty feel. So I just wondered if you faced opposition to that, how you kind of came to it.
No, the great thing about Blinded by the Light is I had no opposition whatsoever for anything. It was like, whatever you want, Gurinder, it's yours. Right down to Bruce saying, give her what she wants. So I'm very pleased about that with that movie. That is a movie that I made completely, that no one interfered with or no one made me compromise on anything. So with the Blinded by the Light is a film about words and the meaning of words, and whether they're Bruce's words or Javid's words, it's about words. So very early on, it was always there in the script that the words were going to appear on screen, but we hadn't always worked out how they were going to appear, but we knew they were going to appear. But what that meant to me as a director was that the words were a character. So in the script, the words were always their own character. So when the words appear on the screen, they appear in an emotional way. They're there emotionally, as opposed to just there as subtitles. And that's the difference. You know, they play a role, emotional role. I talk about emotion a lot because to me that is what cinema is. It's the language, it's emotion. It's using the tools of writing, directing, camera, sound, music, everything about conveying emotions.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. The next question we have is from Juhi.
Yes, Juhi.
Hey, how are you? Can you see me and hear me okay?
Oh, yes, there you are, Juhi Desai.
Yes.
Good Jew. House, yes.
House. So first of all, I just want to say, Gurinderji, thank you for being on this Zoom, and thank you to Kalakars. Really, been doing some really great stuff, especially during quarantine. I'll get right to the question. I was wondering, as the others have also mentioned, Bend It Like Beckham was a huge, I actually said this to a colleague earlier, it was kind of the anthem of my teenage years. I also played soccer, felt a lot of what the parents and the children in the film felt. And, but completely on the other side of the production, I was wondering, when you mentioned earlier that the financing took a few years and all of that, that's the one thing that I sort of get a little bit of anxiety about when thinking about producing any sort of film, short, feature, documentary, narrative, anything, is the financing. And so especially earlier on, what was your mindset and how did you even enter the arena of financing as a filmmaker?
Let me tell you, both Channel 4 and the BBC passed on Blinded by the Light. Like, so it's still a struggle. I mean, they both passed on it. And I was like, are you kidding me? You're going to pass on this movie with Bruce Springsteen attached, and it's that well to Bend It Like Beckham, and it's such a great script, and diversity, and they were like, oh, you know, Channel 4, the guy at Channel 4 said, yeah, but I'm not really a Bruce Springsteen fan. And the woman at the BBC said, I don't really get it. So that still happens to me. So I don't want to sit here and say it's all easy, and, you know, because it isn't. It isn't. As soon as you make the decision to tell a story from our perspective with an Asian in the lead, you know, you get into all kinds of trouble because people perceive us as not commercial. Even though I have made so many films that have made money, I still, you know, feel that, you know, you still have to push, you know. Yeah, it's a real bitch, and I'm afraid I don't have any supportive words to say about that because I still struggle myself. And I'm so fucking pissed off about it. There recently was a struggle. The BFI did a report. It's on the BFI, British Film Institute website. They did a massive study on British cinema, and they did this survey. They examined all the films that have come out, and they did a report on who is the most prolific British film director today, right? Who's the most prolific? So who would you say is on that list? Who would you say would be, you know, the top 3, let's say?
I mean,
who do people think?
I would assume older white males.
Danny Boyle.
Yeah, Danny Boyle.
Yeah, right. So Danny Boyle, yeah.
Ken Loach.
Ken Loach, yeah. But it turns out that the most prolific film director in Britain working at the moment is me.
Yep. Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah, I read somewhere that Bend It Like Beckham also played in North Korea, which I was like, what? Like,
yes. Yeah, so like Bend It Like Beckham is the only movie made in the West that has been distributed in every single country in the world, including North Korea. So that's another one. But anyway, the reason I'm saying that is because we kind of have this perception, or I have this perception that people aren't interested in our stories, and I still have that, you know. And I don't think it's that they're not interested. I think it's more that they want them in a way that suits them, whereas we want to be cleverer in how we tell our own stories. And that's the constant thing that I'm always struggling with, is I come up with something that's a bit different and a bit out there, and then people are like, and even my own cousins, my cousin Sandeep in Australia, he's like, why do you always have to do these weird things? Why do you always have to put gay people in? You know, he's like,
oh man.
That's my cousin in Australia. They were like, like that. But I think that I do think that things are changing. I just think that we just have to be, you know, authentic, you know. On a good note, I've been writing a script during lockdown, And I wrote the first draft of it in February, just before lockdown. And I'd gone to a financier and they read it and they said, oh, this is great. We want to make this. And I was like, fucking hell, finally. And so that is a film that, you know, as soon as we come out of lockdown, I don't think I'll have a problem financing that. But, you know, the conception of it is very commercial. And you'll be pleased to know the lead is a Gujarati. And, you know, the concept of it is commercial. Because I looked at what are the movies that are being made, what kind of movies are being made, and so I thought, okay, this is what's being made. So, but and also, you know, we're working on an animation with Netflix, and we're also working on another teen sort of movie with Netflix, and so there's stuff happening, you know. But those heartfelt stories about our own experiences, you know, that we care so much about, you know. Those need special handling, is what I would say. They need special handling. There is an audience, but they need special handling, you know.
Mm-hmm. So we started about 10 minutes late, so we've got a couple more minutes here to wrap up. I'm going to open up to maybe one or two more questions. There were a couple of questions regarding actors, so I will let, I know Nikhil had, let's go with Piali. Piali had a question regarding actors and working with them.
Hi.
A very cute little boy has joined us. Jay Menon's little boy. A very cute little boy. Hello.
Hi. This is Sage. I'm also known as Style Bhai, Gurinder Ji. Namaste, Sat Sri Akal. I did the course for Twist from Love Ajkal. That's my course that I sold to people. And other stuff. But anyway, boy.
Yeah, your son is absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, who was speaking?
Piali.
Piali. Okay.
Hi. Sorry,
Before Piali starts, Piali and her partner Vic put out a great short film. I'll send it your way. It's a very, very touching, great short film in quarantine. But yeah, Piali, I'll let you take it away. Sorry.
Oh my God, yeah, I'd love to see it.
Thank you,
I'd love to see it. Are you taking a video?
This is a big moment for us. We actually saw we're recording. We saw Blinded by the Light last year together and just like cried so much.
It was very touching.
Yeah.
This is an honor. Thank you for answering our question.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for taking a deal, for offering, and for even taking an interest in our work. We were really everything you were saying about being authentic and true to yourself, and our stories really resonated with us, especially since, you know, you were saying you're a big Bruce Springsteen fan.
Yes.
And Bend It Like Beckham. Jess is just like my idol, but enough blabbing. Our question was, as actors, both, as we were saying, your characters resonate with so many of us. We were curious how you work with actors to create characters and what that collaborative process is like.
Well, in the past, what I used to do was I used to watch everything that came out, everything I saw, I would watch, and then if I got impressed with someone, I would follow their career, and then in the back of my mind, as I was writing, I'd have them in my mind. So, for example, with Parminder Nagra, I had seen Parminder in a very small theatre piece in England at the Oval Theatre, and she'd struck me since then. And so for 3 years, I was just following her. She didn't have that much work, but it had stayed in my mind. So when I came to make the movie, I knew that I wanted to cast her. And then, you know, just same with other actors. I see them. I saw a film called, I think it was called After the Rain, about Bhopal. And I saw Kal Penn in it. And I'd always seen Kal Penn as, you know, White Castle type person, you know. But in this film, I was blown away by his performance. I mean, there was no way you thought that actor was born and raised in America. I mean, he played an Indian journalist from Bhopal, like, absolutely faultless, you know. I was amazed. And so he's someone, you know, I'd love to work with, because his acting prowess just really impressed me in that film. Now, obviously, there's a lot more actors around, and so I do rely on casting directors. And so the net is wide. And but what I do, I find casting really hard, probably one of the hardest parts of my job, because I know I do write sort of very well-rounded Asian characters, and I know for a lot of actors, that it's their dream to sort of work in a film with me, and I can only cast one person for that role. So I do get very upset with casting, because I know so many people, kind of want to be part of it, and it's hard, it's hard. But I do, throw the net out wide, and I do sort of really look, but I do get, I get really moved by authenticity, I have to say. Like last night, I binge watched an amazing show, I think, that is on US TV right now, called Pen 15. You guys seen that show?
Heard of it. Haven't watched it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. It is an incredible show about acting, in my opinion. I mean, the two leads, wow, so it's two women who are writing about their high school experiences.
Oh, yeah.
They're 13. They're 13. It's when they were 13, but they're adults playing 13.
Yes.
And the rest of the cast is 13. And one's Japanese and one's American. And I mean, I sit there and I just go, wow, did you see that gesture? Wow, you see what she just did there when that boy looked at her? Wow, did you see this? Did you see this? This is me talking to my husband. Because I'm like just blown away by them capturing what it's like to be 13 as grown women, and going back, to all that awkwardness with boys. And I don't know, I just find it terribly endearing. But as an acting masterclass, I think they will probably be very underrated, by people. But to me, I'm blown away by the emotion and the authenticity of their performances. I would work with either of them in a heartbeat.
Do we have time for one more question, and we'll call it a day on this? Is that cool? Yeah. No. Yes. I'm gonna take it as yes. No one's opposed yet.
Oh my God.
So last question we'll take from Mithu.
Mithu.
Hi. I think Mithu, she's still on mute, actually. Oh, I think you're good now, Mithu.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
I met you a while back at the New York Indian Film Festival, but I think you may have also seen my work for Replacements for the Bandit musical in Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, going back to what you were saying.
You're the singer.
Yes. I'm also working on a documentary, and going back to what you were saying about telling stories about us in our voice, I struggle with finding the balance between telling them in the context of our value system and explaining why to a Western audience, right? Like the teaching aspect or setting up why it's a big deal. And also doing that in a way that's not disrespecting or devaluing the things that our community holds so dear in the eyes of Westerners, which is commercial, right? But it's also where we are and how we grew up. So
yeah, you have to push it. You have to push it so they understand it. But that doesn't mean you have to take away your authenticity. You just have to push it so that in a way that it's a universal language.
Do you have any advice on how do you get to that level of pushing it, though?
Well, okay, so take the mum telling her off in Bend It Like Beckham. I don't know. You tell me any scene you want. You choose a scene of any film of mine, and I'll explain to you how I pushed it.
Mithu, do you have something, a specific scene in mind?
Well, I think you're pretty. I mean, obviously, you've done a great job of explaining it. I think in the context of filmmaking, fiction, it feels less didactic because you can set up the characters, but like in a documentary, I feel like I need to like teach people why this is a big deal. Like I'm working on six who have cut their hair, and you know, it feels, sometimes I just feel like, oh well, no one's gonna care, like what's the big deal? But it's actually like such a big deal. Like people in my community have been completely ostracized. Their parents don't even talk to them anymore for this one thing that holds so much weight and value, right? And teaching them about it feels like now it's become an educational resource versus telling the story of someone who was deeply hurt by this.
Well, I would ask you to look at, why do you want to tell that story? Why do you want to tell that story? What is it that you want to do with telling that story? And then why do you want to tell that story to a wider audience? So what is it really about, that story? It's like me and the Bhangra thing, I'm British but, you know, that was a story about me wanting to just make a pop promo about a Bhangra band, you know, on the rooftop of the Southall shop, like the Beatles. You know, I shot them on the roof of a shop in Southall Broadway. But in pushing it, it really became about that music representing being British and Indian at the time when there wasn't, that concept didn't exist, hybridity didn't exist, because you know, your parents talked about back home all the time, and they were immigrants, and we hadn't quite established who we were yet. So in some ways, you know, is your story about faith. That it doesn't matter about your hair. And it's about faith, which then becomes slightly wider than the concept of just hair. Or is it about, you know, holding on to your faith in a hostile environment in America? Or is it, I mean, I have a best friend who lives down the road from me. They're Sikhs. Her husband, Ravi, he's a Sardar, but their son basically made an argument and said, I want to cut my hair. And he was 12 when he cut his hair. And he made the argument to the mum and said, why, that cutting my hair doesn't make me not spiritual and doesn't make me a bad Sikh. But I can't go swimming properly, and you know, I want to cut it because I want to fit in with everyone else. So they let him do it, you know. And my friend's mother-in-law was like furious, you know, for ages and ages. So it's about assimilation. It's about the fear of losing who we are and losing our cultural identity in a hostile environment. And so you have to start talking about it in those terms, because that's what the white folks will understand as soon as you start talking about hostile environment and the pressures on trying to be who we are in those environments. You know, it's so interesting because now there's a third generation. You know, in Britain, there's a third generation who don't even care about, and you know, like, you know, don't even care about all our struggles. They're like, what's your problem? You know, because they listen to the music, they respect their parents, they do that, you know, they go to gurdwaras and mosques and do all that cultural stuff, and it's effortless, you know, for them. Then they go to bars, they have big Asian weddings, you know. It's effortless. The things that we were trying to balance, and for them it's just totally effortless, and that's good. That's good. And mosques and gurdwaras and mandirs have never been so full with people, young people. You know, young people. You'd think that they would just be old people, but no, it's young people. Certainly here in England.
Awesome. So I you know, I know we're over time here. I don't want to take too much more of your time. But Gurinder, just wanted to say thank you again for this. This was
You're most welcome. You're most welcome.
Yeah, this was really, really great for us and our community. I just want to apologize to anyone who I didn't get. There were a ton of questions coming in, so I apologize to folks who I wasn't able to get to. We're obviously limited on time. Before we leave, Gurinder at the top of this had mentioned that, you know, she's working on a few projects where she will be looking for writers. So if you can send if you're interested, and I'm sure folks are going to be very interested in this opportunity, if you can send your CV and a paragraph or two about yourself, we will certainly pass it on to her. You could send it to the Kalakars email. If you have my email, please feel free to send it to me, and I will be more than happy to pass it on to Gurinderji.
Yeah, what is happening now with the proliferation of everything is that people are approaching me with projects that they would like to have my eye on, you know, or they would like me to write, or at least have my eye on. What I'm trying to do is say, look, I'll supervise another writer. You know, I'll supervise someone else who's up and coming to make sure you get what you want, but I also encourage, you know, more writers basically, and directors later. So there's about 3 series right now where people have approached me to come and be co-producers on, you know, be a co-producer on. And it would be awesome if I could get a bank of writers, preferably who have experience in TV writing or film, that I can then funnel through these different projects that are coming my way, and then have like a body of writers that I can turn to for all the stuff. Because of course with Netflix and all that, everyone wants, and Amazon and that, you know, I do get offered quite a lot of projects and I can't always take them on. But if there's people there who I think would be good and could run with it, and then that's a way of branching out, you know, for everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely get everyone to you, and hopefully we can get some collaboration going here. But again, thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you.
And thanks for everyone for joining. Actually, next week we've got, I almost forgot to make this announcement. Who do we have next week here? I think you can see my screen. So we've got Richie Mehta, who did the Netflix series
Yes.
Time. And then the week after that, we've got Rami Youssef and Shireen Davis. Obviously, Rami from his television show Rami. Shireen is an amazing writer-director in her own right, who's done Amrika, May in the Summer, and she's directed several episodes of Ozark and Empire and whatnot. So we hope everyone can join for that as well. And on that note, again, thank you so much, Gurinderji. This really meant a lot to us, and hope to stay connected.
Absolutely. Thank you, and good luck, everyone. I hope I was able to show you a bit of inspiration. I know I was being a bit down on some things, but you know, it's the most important thing is to just keep going, because ultimately, you know, it's the work that counts, and with the work we win, you know, and the more you write, the better you'll be at it. And those stories will get out there. You know, we just need more people who look like us to commission them, you know, and that's happening. But the most important thing is to keep doing it. You have to keep going. And there are moments when you want to give up, but you've got to just, you know, keep pursuing it. And I always remember this one thing. It was where Bend It Like Beckham means so much to so many of us. You know, I would urge you to go and read the review of Bend It Like Beckham in the New York Times, you know, when it came out, because you will read such a crock of shit, you know. But that's what we're up against. You know, it was A.O. Scott, and he said, this film does not represent Asians in Britain today. It's not the authentic voice, you know. So as a director, and I read that, I was like, what? How does he know? You know, that's all my freaking family in the film, you know. How does he know? So, like, we're always going to have that, but then the balance of that is you all, you know, and also, you know, knowing that every single member of the US World Cup soccer team, every member has quoted saying they got into soccer from watching Bend It Like Beckham, you know. So the impact of our work is enormous, and culturally we can't always measure it, you know, because we don't always have the tools, which is why we're ahead, you know, and which is why when you write your stories, think about that. Think about the fact that you're ahead. And here I am, you know, sitting here now at my age, and look at so many of you really, really young, you know, and that's a great legacy for me, you know, that I was able to inspire you to start writing. So that's tremendous. And then you all can think about that now, you know, with other younger people. But do get in touch with me through, you know, Adil. Do get in touch with me if I can help you with your pitches, if I can help you, you know, shape your stories. You know, if you're really serious about it, you know, if you're willing to do the work, then I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. And on that
All
note,
right.
we'll talk next week. Thanks.
All the best.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.